3 aircraft carriers. Right now, somewhere between the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, 3 of the most powerful warships ever built are operating in the same stretch of water. USS Gerald R. Ford, USS Abraham Lincoln, and USS Harry S. Truman. Together, they represent over 200 combat aircraft, more than 20,000 sailors and airmen, and enough firepower to devastate the military infrastructure of a mid-sized nation in a single operational cycle. The last time the United States deployed 3 carrier strike groups to a single theater simultaneously was the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Before that, you have to go back to Desert Storm in 1991. This is not a routine deployment. This is a statement, written in steel and jet fuel, about what American naval power looks like when it is fully committed. But here is what the news does not explain. How does a 3-carrier operation actually work? How do you coordinate 200 aircraft from 3 different ships? What does each carrier bring that the others cannot? And what does it take, at the mechanical and human level, to sustain that kind of force in one of the world's most contested waterways? That is what we are going to break down today. Before we get into the carriers individually, you need to understand one thing that most coverage completely misses. A carrier strike group is not a carrier. A carrier strike group is a carrier plus everything required to protect it, sustain it, and extend its reach. Around each of these 3 carriers moves a constellation of escorting warships. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers capable of shooting down ballistic missiles at altitude. Los Angeles or Virginia-class. Attack submarines running silent beneath the surface. A cruiser or destroyer coordinating air and missile defense across the entire formation. Supply ships capable of refueling and rearming the entire group at sea without ever stopping. When you put 3 of these groups in the same theater, you're not looking at 3 times the firepower of one carrier. You're looking at something closer to 10 times the operational flexibility, because each group covers different water, different threat vectors, and different mission sets simultaneously. The coordination that makes 3 carrier groups operate as a single coherent force is one of the most complex things the United States military does. It involves integrated air operations centers, shared targeting data, synchronized strike schedules, and continuous deconfliction of hundreds of aircraft operating in overlapping airspace. Understanding how that works starts with understanding what each carrier actually is. USS Harry S. Truman was the first of the 3 to arrive in the region, and that matters. Truman departed Naval Station Norfolk in September 2024, with Carrier Air Wing 1 embarked, 9 squadrons including F/A, 18E, and F/A 18F Super Hornets, EA 18G Growlers for electronic warfare, and E-2D Hawkeye airborne command and control aircraft. Over the 8 months that followed, the Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group logged more than 13,000 sorties, 25,000 flight hours, and 240,000 nautical miles across the 5th and 6th Fleet areas of operations, the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the waters approaching the Persian Gulf. That deployment history matters because it means Truman's crew arrived in this theater already experienced. They had already flown combat operations. They had already worked the threat environment, understood the regional air traffic picture, and built the operational patterns that allow a carrier to sustain high-tempo operations without burning through its people and its aircraft at an unsustainable rate. In carrier operations, experience is not a soft factor. An air wing that has already flown 13,000 sorties in a contested environment performs differently than one that hasn't. Crew coordination is tighter. Maintenance routines are faster. The decision-making under pressure is more deliberate. Truman was the carrier already in position when the situation in the region escalated. Its presence was not a reaction. It was the foundation on which the three-carrier structure was built. So, why are there 3 aircraft carriers in the region? 3 carrier strike groups allow the United States to operate across multiple areas simultaneously, the largest concentration of carriers in the region since the 2003 Iraq War. And a carrier strike group is far more than a carrier. Each one includes the carrier itself, guided missile destroyers, submarines, cruisers, and logistics ships. USS Harry S. Truman arrived first, bringing an air wing with extensive operational experience in the region. And that experience matters. Combat operations build tighter crew coordination, faster maintenance routines, and more deliberate decision-making under pressure. USS Gerald R. Ford arrived in the Eastern Mediterranean as the most technologically advanced carrier ever deployed to a combat theater. The Ford is the lead ship of the Navy's newest carrier class, and the differences between it and the Nimitz-class ships like Truman and Lincoln are significant in ways that directly affect combat operations. The most important is the catapult system. Nimitz-class carriers use steam catapults, mechanical systems that have existed on carriers since the 1950s, to launch aircraft from the flight deck. Ford uses EMALS, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system. Instead of steam pressure, EMALS uses a linear induction motor to accelerate aircraft down the catapult track. That distinction matters for 3 reasons. First, EMALS generates less stress on aircraft airframes than steam catapults, which means the aircraft aboard Ford accumulate fatigue damage more slowly. Over the course of a sustained combat deployment, that translates to more available aircraft at any given time. Second, EMALS can be precisely calibrated for each aircraft type, from a light drone to a fully loaded FA-18 carrying external weapons, without manual adjustment. Third, the system is more reliable at high sortie rates. Steam catapults require significant maintenance between cycles. EMALS does not. Ford also carries the advanced arresting gear, a new wire system that replaced the hydraulic arresting cables used since World War II. The old system applied a fixed hydraulic resistance when an aircraft caught the wire. The new system uses a controlled rotary energy absorber that adjusts in real time to the weight and speed of the aircraft catching it. That reduces the shock load on landing aircraft and eliminates a category of landing accidents that the old system could not prevent. During Operation Epic Fury, Ford's air wing launched more than 12,200 sorties. The EMALS system's performance at that tempo, in sustained combat conditions, was the first real-world test of whether the technology lived up to its design specifications. The Gerald R. Ford was designed around one fundamental idea: generate more aircraft sorties with less maintenance between launches and recoveries. Its electromagnetic catapults, or EMALS, replace the traditional steam system, while the advanced arresting gear automatically adjusts to the aircraft being recovered. During the Ford's historic 11-month deployment, Carrier Air Wing 8 logged more than 12,200 flight launches. including more than 11,800 launches across the deployment and more than 5,500 flight hours in support of Operation Epic Fury. That is the real test of the Ford-class concept, not simply whether its technology works, but whether that technology can generate combat power repeatedly, at scale. USS Abraham Lincoln arrived in the Arabian Sea carrying something that had never operated from a carrier deck in sustained combat before. Marine Corps F-35C stealth fighters. Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 314, the Black Knights, deployed aboard Lincoln as an integrated part of Carrier Air Wing 9. This arrangement is a structural change in how American naval aviation is organized, not a temporary experiment. Marine F-35C squadrons are now being embedded permanently into Navy Carrier Air Wings, creating a mixed force of conventional and stealth aircraft operating from the same ship. The significance of that mix cannot be overstated. The F-35C's radar cross-section, the size it appears on enemy radar, is classified, but estimates based on its design characteristics place it orders of magnitude smaller than a conventional Super Hornet. Where the Super Hornet might appear on radar as a small aircraft, the F-35C appears as something closer to a large bird. In a combat environment where adversary air defenses are actively tracking aircraft by their radar returns, that difference is the difference between a mission that succeeds and a pilot who does not come home. But the F-35C does not operate alone. The tactical picture that Lincoln's Air Wing prosecuted during Epic Fury combined F-35C stealth penetration with EA-18G Growler electronic warfare and conventional Super Hornet strike capability in a coordinated sequence. The sequence works like this. The Growlers from Electronic Attack Squadron 133 go first, mapping the adversary's air defense radar network and beginning jamming operations. The F-35Cs follow, operating at the edge of or inside defended airspace, using their sensor fusion systems to identify and prioritize targets. The Super Hornets, protected by the electronic umbrella the Growlers have created, deliver the bulk of the weapons. The E-2D Hawkeyes, orbiting at altitude, coordinate the entire package from above. This is not one aircraft doing one job. It is a system. And Lincoln's Air Wing, more than any previous carrier air wing, represented that system at full development. And this is what made the Abraham Lincoln's Air Wing so significant. Lincoln became the first carrier to deploy Marine F-35Cs in sustained combat operations, bringing the Black Knights of VMFA 314 into a Navy carrier air wing. But the F-35C was never designed to fight alone. Growlers could disrupt the enemy's radar and electronic defenses. F-35Cs could penetrate contested airspace and identify targets. And Super Hornets could deliver the strike. Above them, the E-2D Hawkeye coordinated the battle space, turning individual aircraft into a single, layered strike system. This was no longer just a collection of aircraft. It was an integrated air wing. The three-carrier structure is not about redundancy. It is about simultaneity. A single carrier strike group can project air power over a specific geographic area and sustain a specific sortie rate. Two carrier groups can cover twice the geography, but they can also do something a single group cannot. They can force an adversary to defend multiple threat vectors simultaneously. An air defense system designed to handle 50 aircraft attacking from one direction faces a fundamentally different problem when 100 aircraft are approaching from two directions at once. Three carrier groups make that problem insoluble for most air defense networks. Ford operated from the eastern Mediterranean, providing strike access to northern and western targets. Lincoln operated from the Arabian Sea, covering targets to the south and east. The positioning was not arbitrary. It was designed to ensure that no single air defense engagement zone could cover both attack corridors simultaneously. The three-carrier structure also provides something less visible, but equally important: persistence. A single carrier can sustain high-tempo operations for a limited period before its air wing and crew require rest and maintenance. With three carriers, you can rotate sortie rates, surging one group while the others maintain steady-state operations, without ever reducing total strike capacity below a threatening level. In practical terms, this means the adversary never gets a break. There is no window where the air threat is reduced long enough to allow resupply, repositioning, or repair of damaged systems. The pressure is continuous, the scope is total, and the coordination that makes all of it possible is what separates a three-carrier operation from simply tripling the number of ships. When the history of Operation Epic Fury is written, the strategic deployment of three carrier strike groups will occupy a specific chapter, not because the outcome was uncertain, but because of what the deployment demonstrated about the state of American naval aviation. The Ford's EMALS system sustained over 12,200 sorties without a category failure. That answer, definitive, in combat conditions, at operational tempo, closes a decade of debate about whether the technology was ready for war. Lincoln's integration of Marine F-35Cs into a carrier air wing proved, in combat, that the multi-domain strike model the Navy has been developing for years works as designed. The combination of stealth, electronic warfare, and conventional strike in a synchronized package is not a concept. It is a doctrine proven in combat. And Truman's deployment record, 13,000 sorties, 25,000 flight hours, 240,000 nautical miles before the operation even began, demonstrated that Nimitz-class carriers, with the right crews and the right maintenance, can sustain operational readiness across an 8-month deployment, followed immediately by high-tempo combat operations. Here is what that means for the future. The United States Navy can now field a three-carrier combat operation with mixed fourth- and fifth-generation aircraft, powered by a proven electromagnetic launch system, coordinated across multiple geographic theater areas, and sustained at high tempo for an extended period. No other Navy on Earth can do that. Not today. Not at this scale. Not with this combination of capability. Three carriers at Iran's doorstep was not a statement of intent. It was a demonstration of capability. And the data it generated, from EMALS performance logs to F-35C combat sortie records to EA-18G targeting data, will shape how American naval aviation is built and deployed for the next 20 years. The three-carrier deployment is complete, but the questions it raised are not. Ford will require significant maintenance after a 326-day deployment, and the Navy is now calculating what that means for carrier availability in the next operational cycle. Lincoln's Air Wing has demonstrated the F-35C's combat capability, which accelerates decisions about how quickly to expand that model to other carrier air wings. And the performance data from every EMALS launch, every Growler jamming mission, and every F-35C combat sortie is now being analyzed by program offices that will use it to define the next generation of carrier aircraft and systems. That next generation What comes after the F-35C? What replaces the Super Hornet? What the flight deck of a future carrier might look like is what Naval Air Dispatch covers next. Subscribe so you do not miss it. And if this breakdown of how a 3-carrier operation actually works was something you did not fully understand before today, that is exactly what this channel is for.